Hi, welcome to my video about selecting a PC to use for embroidery digitizing. And this is June of 2021, and Crystal asked this question in our Facebook group, Digitizing School, in the Facebook group. So, Crystal, this is for you, but of course, I figure other people might want to know the same thing as well. So when it comes to buying a computer for digitizing, you're going to expect to spend $500 or more. And I'm going to go through what it is you're looking for, as well as actually showing you a few computers that would be suitable for digitizing. So to start off with, you have the question of whether you want a desktop or a laptop PC. And with a desktop, you're going to get a lower price for what you're getting. But with a laptop, you're going to get more portability. And finally, with a desktop, it's easier to get it repaired because your local Geek Squad or any number of other repair people can pretty easily open up a standard desktop computer and do some work on it for you as needed or replace parts. Whereas laptops, things are pretty specific, the parts that go in there, and you have to have the same exact same thing typically to replace it. So you make a choice. If you have to have portability, if you know that you're going to be traveling around with the thing and you're going to go with a laptop, that's fine. Just realize that it's not as repairable easily and the cost is more probably for the same thing that you would find in a desktop, which is going to be, staying at your home or your office. There's a nice article that I found. I'm going to move this PDF file out of the way at computerhope.com, desktop computer versus laptop computer. And this person did a pretty nice job of doing a comparison. And they talk about cost, portability, the processors, the internal storage. If you'd like to go there, just go to computerhope.com and look for desktop computer versus laptop computer. And that should help you out a little bit. All right, most computers you buy today are going to have Windows 10. The only exception is going to be a Mac. If you bought a Mac, great. The thing is, if you're using Generations software and a lot of the other digitizing programs out there, they won't run on a Mac unless you're also installing Windows on the Mac, which currently is it adds a layer of complexity, I would say, that you don't need to deal with. So you're going to look for a Windows computer. It's going to have Windows 10. Whether it's home or business or professional doesn't really matter much for what we're doing. The rest of this is about the specifications or specs regarding what this PC needs to have in order to make it a quote-unquote good computer for digitizing. The thing is that a digitizing process is going to require about the same sort of thing from a PC that a gaming PC does. So if you went into a store and were going to buy a PC specifically for digitizing embroidery designs, and you said to the salesperson there, I'm looking for a PC that would work well for digitizing embroidery designs, they would not know what that is. But if you said to them, I'm looking for a PC that would be good for gaming. I don't do gaming, but I know that a gaming PC would work well for what I actually want to do. They would be able to lead you directly to appropriate PCs for gaming. So you might keep that little gaming tip in mind. All right, so what is it we're looking for specifically? Well, first of all, we're going to look at the processor. That is the brain or the chip or the CPU, to be technical, Central Processing Unit. But the processor mostly that you're going to find today is made by Intel, and it starts with the letter I. It's going to have a number behind it. It might be an i3, an i5, i7, i9. Those are the numbers, and the higher the number, typically the more capable the processor is, the larger something called cache inside of it would be, and so on. And then you're also going to look at the generation of the processor. That is it a 10th generation, that is one that was just made in the last year or two, or is it, like an 8th generation or a 6th generation, which are getting much, much older now. So the first thing I want to tell you is when we're looking at a processor, we're going to look for like an i5 or an i7, or if you find an i9, that's fine. So if you have a piece of scratch paper that you're taking notes with, I would start with writing down that you're looking for a what quote unquote gaming PC. Second thing I'd write down is the processor needs to be an i5 or a higher number. Next, RAM. That is the amount of what's called random access memory, but rather than knowing that, let's just say if you were to have an analogy with the brain, the human brain, this is the amount of processing space that you have or area that you have for doing your processing. So you're going to get a computer, and typically you'll see one that's going to have 8 gigabytes of RAM. And then it'll typically give you the speed of the RAM, but a modern computer is going to have fairly fast RAM. So you're looking for 8 gigabytes or higher. You might get typically a 16 gigabyte computer would be the next step up. Either 8 would be enough, 16 would be a little better. Next, and this is probably the very biggest thing of all when it comes to gaming or digitizing. In order to make a budget computer and save money, what manufacturers quite often will do is that they will generate the video signal on the main board of the computer. In other words, they will do all the work to make the graphics that are put up on your computer screen right there on the main board of the computer. And that's what we call an integrated graphics card. It's integrated into the motherboard or the main board. And that video processing requires RAM. So with an integrated video processor, it's going to actually just borrow some of the RAM that is used for the brain or the CPU. So if you got a computer with 8 gigs of RAM, but the video processing is going to take some of that RAM and borrow it, you no longer have 8 gigs of RAM available for the processing. So the best thing you can do when it comes to a digitizing or gaming computer is to get one that has its own separate video card. And they come with several different brand names, and I'll show them to you in a minute. But a video card then has its own RAM built into the card that is specifically made for processing video for you. So you're looking for a computer that has a specific video cards in it. The next thing is what's called the solid state drive, or SSD. It used to be called a hard drive, and you'll still find some computers that have hard drives in them. You want to shy away from those because the solid state drive, or SSD, is way, way faster at getting your data in and out of the storage area. So what we used to call the hard drive, now we call a solid state drive. That's the area that is storage. If, again, analogy to the human brain, it's your long-term memory. When you think back, hey, what's my Social Security number? You're going into the long-term memory area of your brain. The same sort of thing happens with a computer. If you're asking it, hey, go look up this file that I had from, a year ago, it's going to go into the storage area, which used to be called the hard drive, now called the solid state drive, or SSD. Okay. Also on that solid state drive is the operating system. That's where Windows is stored and where it has to get all of its instructions from when it needs to do something. And all your other files are stored there, as well as your programs or applications. Those are stored there as well. So disk storage space, hard drives or solid state drives, typically are sized in gigabytes, and nowadays typically the low end would be a 256 gigabyte storage space. The next step up typically is 512 gigabytes, and the next step up from that is 1 terabyte. So we're looking for a solid state drive, and it has to have at least 256 gigs of storage, but we'd like to have 500 gigs or 512 gigabytes if that's possible. In to be price conscious, you're probably not going to find a 1 terabyte solid state drive. And I would much rather have a 256 gig solid state drive than a 1 terabyte or a 2 terabyte hard drive, because the difference in speed pulling your data off of there is so much faster. All right, next thing we need is USB ports. I'm going to move this out of the way again for a second, talk about USB ports. Let me just grab this and drag that PDF file. Coming over here. On your computer, on the side, you remember those little ports that you plug this in, little square-shaped ports. Nowadays, sometimes you'll find computers that don't have that port anymore. Instead, what they'll have is let's get a picture of that, USB-C port. So this is a USB-C, is this tiny little thing right here. Let me make my face smaller. I don't need to be that big in there. This tiny little thing here is kind of a rounded thing, and you see compared to that, right? Okay, so you might find computers with that sort of a hole on it, and by comparison, you can look right here. This little thing will show you one. So this is what's called a USB hub, and this one is designed to plug into your computer that has a USB-C port. And on this, you can see then it gives you additional ports. There's a USB, the old style, USB-A port, USB-A port, and there's another USB-C port. So anyways, this is what the ports on the side of the computer. Here's the thing. You can get an adapter that if your computer has a USB-C port, but you need a USB-A port, which looks like that, there's little adapters that you can buy for $5 or $10 that will convert this port into one of those types. And what do you need that for? And that is that most digitizing programs, including Generations, requires what's called a security dongle. So let's take a look at that. Here's some security dongles. This one is not Generations, but it's the same concept. It's basically a key. You can think of it as the key to a car, only in this case it's the key to this particular computer application or software program. So this little thing plugs into the USB port on your computer. So you're going to need a computer that has a port like that, or if it has the other style port, then you can just get an adapter. So we're just going to type in here adapter, USB-C to USB-A, and we should find an adapter. And there's the adapter we're looking for right there. So there's actually 3 of them in this package. If I can blow it up a little bit. There it is. So there you would plug your dongle that has the USB-A into this thing, and then this would go into the USB-C port of your computer. That would typically work just fine. I mention that because now as you're looking at computers, sometimes you're going to see computers that no longer have that style port, but you might have that style of dongle. So if you do, you're going to want to get an adapter if you did get one of those type of computers. Okay, so we've talked about the solid state drive, the USB ports. You're going to need a port to plug your dongle into, your security dongle if you have one. And then last but not least, let's talk about mice or mouse versus a pen versus a trackpad. Years ago, Holly was teaching a class, and we had a student that came in the class and brought her laptop and was trying to use her trackpad for digitizing. It does not work well. I have never seen, and I've seen other people try to do it since then, but I've never seen anyone successful at it, because a trackpad is great for a lot of things, but digitizing is not one of them. More typically, we've been using a mouse for years, and when you are digitizing, a mouse would do a very good job of getting you around, right? So you're going to need a mouse, and you probably already have one, and the other option is a pen. Be aware that some pen computers, like the Surface and so on, might not work with your digitizing program. So if you buy a computer thinking you're going to use the pen with it, you might want to make sure you have a return policy and you can take it back if it doesn't work with your program. And that takes us to Let's Go Shopping. I'm not going to give you a link in here to specific computers that would work. I would rather teach you how to look at the computer specs and decide if it's what you need or not. So that's what we're going to do. The problem with giving you a link to a computer that works for digitizing is that tomorrow they could sell out of that computer or discontinue it, or the store drops it or whatever, or they just change their website and that link no longer works. So rather than do that, let's just go a little bit of browsing around and looking at some computers, right? So here we go. Now, if you have, let me back up a step. If you're keeping a notepad and you've written these things down, here's what you should have, right? You need to have Windows 10, and it needs to say i5 or i7 or i9. RAM, you should have written down 8 gigabytes. You should have written down video card, exclamation mark, and we'll show you how to see that you've got that. Have written down on your scratch pad SSD, which is solid state drive, and write down 256 gigabyte or larger. And then you need to write down USB ports, which most computers have them. And of course you need to have written down mouse, which you probably already have a mouse, but you need to consider that. Okay, so here we are. We're doing a web search here, and I've just brought up Dell website. They sell computers, and we're going to also look at Amazon, and we're going to look at Best Buy. So I went into Dell, and what I did is I just typed in gaming and hit search. Okay, they're offering to chat with me, but no thanks. All right, so here we have a Dell G5 gaming desktop. G5 doesn't mean anything except to Dell. It means a certain model. All right, we're going to look here at the Intel processor. It says it's an Intel i5 10th generation processor. So remember we said our processor needed to be an i5 or i7 or i9 or higher, and it is 10th generation. That's current, the latest model. Next, it has Windows 10 Home Edition in English. That's good. Here's the video card. It says it has an NVIDIA, INVIDIA brand, GeForce GTX 1650 with 4 gigabytes of GDDR6, which is to say 4 gigabytes of RAM. So this computer has a video card built into it. I mean, excuse me, not a built. It has a separate video card as opposed to the one that's included in the motherboard. And so this would be good from that terms. All right, next we have the RAM. It's telling you they have 8 gigabytes of RAM, and it tells you what type of RAM, but if it's a modern computer, that's fine. But down here, here's a problem. It says 1 terabyte, 1 TB, 7200 RPM. Hard disk drive, HDD is what that says right there. So this one does not have a solid state drive, and I would move on to the next one. Next one over here, right down here, we can see hard disk drive also, right? Over here, we have a solid state drive, SSD. Well, let's look at the rest of the specs. 10th generation i7 Intel. That's good. Windows 10 has the NVIDIA video card, and that one has 12 gigabytes of RAM, so it's extremely good video card. It would work very fast. It has 16 gigabytes of RAM, which is your processor. That's the video RAM. This is the processor RAM. And it has a 512 gigabyte solid state drive. This would be a great computer for digitizing. You might not like the price. I don't know if I would or not, but you know, if that's in your budget, then that would be a good choice. And if it's not, we can keep looking. Okay? Here we're looking at a laptop. This has an i7 processor, and it has Windows 10. It has its own, and this is unusual for laptops to have their own separate video processor card, but it does have a video card built into it. Again, NVIDIA brand. It has 6 gigs of video RAM built into it. This has 16 gigabytes of RAM to run the processor and a 512 gigabyte solid state drive. So, thank you, but no. So this would be a really good choice if you needed a laptop, and I actually like the price on that. $200 better than I like the price on this, and it would work just fine. Scrolling down. Another laptop, same price as the other one. All right, but again, let's just go through the specs. This is an i7 10th generation processor, Windows 10. It has a video card, has 16 gigabytes of RAM. It has a 1 terabyte solid state drive. Again, this one would work really well for digitizing. We're going to assume that there's some kind of a USB ports on it. But let's go for a lower price, okay? So this one here looks like it would do just fine, and it's under $1,000 today. And it has a 10th generation i5 processor and Windows 10. It has a separate video card with its own RAM. This is 4 gigabytes of RAM for the video processor, and it has 8 gigabytes of RAM for the main memory. And this is a 512 gigabyte, which is plenty big, solid state drive. So this would be a very good choice, and it's under $1,000, and so on. So we've looked here at some options and found some. Here's one, but it has an i5 processor, Windows 10. It has its own video card. It has 8 gigabytes of RAM. It has a 256 gig solid state drive, so this one would work just fine when they get it back in stock again. And the price is even more reasonable. Okay, so we've shopped at Dell. Let's go take a look over at Amazon. I did a search up here and said budget gaming PC. That was my search. So now, be aware that when you do the search on Amazon, you probably know that the first thing you're going to see is sponsored. Okay, this is people who are paying to have an advertisement for their product stuck in front of anyone who does a search for any number of keywords that they specify. So here's the thing. When it's a sponsored thing, it might not really meet what you typed in up there, and then again, it might. So we're going to skip past the sponsored one. It'll probably show up down here anyway. All right, this is a mini gaming PC desktop, AMD Ryzen. Okay, AMD is a different brand, not an Intel. It probably will work, and I said probably, just fine, but I'm not sure. NVIDIA, so that has its own graphics card built in. That's one of the major brands of graphics card that has its own 4 gigabytes of video RAM. It has 8 gigabytes of RAM for the processor and a 500 gigabyte solid state drive. So, and Windows 10 Home. This one probably would work, but again, make sure you can return it if you find that it does not work because of that processor. This one says I buy Power Gaming PC, so it's a Brand X gaming PC. It has a Ryzen processor, so we're just going to skip that one. Let's see here. Here's an Intel quad-core i5. So it's an i5 processor, and the price is good, but look at this, 7,200 RPM hard disk drive, so we're going to skip that one. All right, so this is how I would go down through here. Here's a Dell Optiplex. It's renewed, but it still has a warranty. It has a 2 terabyte hard drive, so we're going to skip that one. And so on. So going down through here, that's another place you can shop for your computers. Now, if you're watching this video and you see a computer and you think, gee, I'm not sure this will work, if you're a member of our Facebook group, come on over, just grab a link to it. Here's how we do it. I'm going to click this one, come up there, and copy that link, and I'd come over back into our Facebook group, and I would post a question and say, please look at this computer, tell me if it would be okay for digitizing, right? So it's in Digitizing School. I'm going to click Digitizing School, right? So that's our Facebook group, Embroidery Digitizing School. You can do a search for it. It's actually facebook.com/groups/digitizing school. Come on over and join the group if you're not already a member. I'd be happy to take a quick look at your computer choice and see if that would work for what you want to do. Okay, this one I just happened to pick out was a Hewlett-Packard computer with an i5. It's 2 years old. 8 gigabytes of RAM, a 512 solid state drive, and I do not see anything here saying that there's a separate video card, so I would take a pass on that one. Again, I'm happy to look at your choices in our Facebook group. Okay, next we're going to go over to Best Buy, and the reason I'm going to Best Buy is because everybody has a Best Buy near them practically in America. So I typed in gaming laptop and hit enter, and here we go. Now, whoops, yeah, I typed in gaming laptop. Let's type in gaming computer, right? That's going to give it some different responses, I think. Okay, so it's going to give us choices. Do we have, there we go, gaming desktops. Let's look at those first, and then we'll come back and do gaming laptops. So gaming desktop, take a look here. Price might be a little high, but for what we're looking for or need, but if this is in your budget, that's fine. It's a Hewlett-Packard gaming desktop. It has an Intel Core i7 processor with 16 gigs of RAM, NVIDIA GeForce graphics card, and a 512 solid-state drive. And it has a 1 terabyte hard disk drive also. A lot of your stuff would go onto the main drive, but this would be a drive that you'd use for storing extra things that you don't need to get to so often. I've heard of Hewlett-Packard. I've never heard of iBuyPower. Nothing wrong with them, maybe. I don't know that brand. It has an Intel i7, 16 gigs of memory, NVIDIA GeForce graphics card with 6 gigs of RAM for video, a 480 gigabyte solid state drive, which would be fine. And again, they have a hard drive as well. So this one should work also. All right, let's look at pricing. As a matter of fact, let's go up here and go to pricing low to high. Let's resort that. All right, what do we get with this $599 computer? Again, it's this brand I have never heard of, but that's not necessarily bad. It has an i3 processor. I would take a pass on that for that reason. This has a AMD Ryzen processor. I'd take a pass. Again, with Intel, with Best Buy, they have a return policy. Ask about that if you're going to take something that you're not sure of. This is a refurbished. I don't like the star ratings, but other than that, it has a 120 gigabyte solid state drive, which is pretty small. All right, this one's a Ryzen. We're going to skip it. This is Intel i3. We're going to skip that. Ryzen, skip it. Let's just keep on going until we find something that would work. It's a Core i3. That's why I'm skipping it. Ryzen, skipping it for that reason. Core i5, okay, 8 gigabytes of RAM, that's good. NVIDIA, that's good, so its own separate processor for video, and a 256 solid-state drive. This computer, made by HP, Hewlett-Packard, would work. And currently it's sold out at probably my local store, I'm not sure, but the price is good, $699, okay? All right, so we could go down and look at other computers, but I think you have the basic concepts of what you're looking for in a computer for digitizing embroidery. I hope this is a helpful video. If it is, and you're on my YouTube channel and would like more information about machine embroidery digitizing, of course, please subscribe to our channel and come on over and join our Facebook group. Again, it's at facebook.com/groups/digitizing school, all one word. And happy to chat with you over there.